Alright, what's going on everybody, it's Liam here, and welcome to today's video on the channel. In today's video, I have a tier list for y'all for Season 4 of 5th Age PvP. I think it's Season 4, it could be Season 5, I don't really know. I stopped caring about PvP, but I figured we'd rank the schools this season based on a couple of the gear changes we got. So far, we have not gotten the PvP balance change for the season yet. The devs said they'll probably be working on that, or there just might not be one for this season, but I figured I would still upload a video about it. If there is a balance change, I will be posting a video on the channel about that, so stay tuned for that. Now keep in mind, videos like these are oftentimes more subjective than not, but I do look at it from an objective, lens as best as I can to my ability with what I see and obviously how the game fundamentals work, and I do take some of the leaderboards into effect with this as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. Coming in at number 1, you guys probably guessed it, it's gonna have to be ice. Now the only reason ice is this high, well, there's a lot of reasons actually, but the two main reasons, one is because of the gear audit, right? Ice has way too much resist. Ice can be immune to 3 schools right now in the meta and keep more damage than a storm. I will say that again. Ice can be immune to 3 schools and keep more damage than a storm in the meta right now. And it has 80 universal resist with the new pack robe. So it is without a doubt objectively like the best stats in the game right now. It's so broken. And then to top it all off, right, you obviously have health, you have A-bomb, you have snowman, right, which just gets you out of jail for free. You have the blimp pet, which no other school has, which is just extremely unfair. Not to mention you have Colossus, which is, like a shield gambit kinda, which is already in the meta. And you have a Scion, which is again a shield gambit, which is already in the meta. So combined, Ice has like 6 problems that KingsIsle could look at to nerf it. That being said, I do enjoy playing my Ice. I think it's a fun school to play right now, but with how broken the stats are, it's pretty absurd, and it doesn't feel like you're actually winning the game. I'm not sure how to describe it, but you're gonna win the game before you get into the game more often than not, because your school is just so much better than the others, and you can make so many mistakes and not have to worry about losing on an ice. And I think that's a big problem, so I would like to see KingsIsle make the school more difficult to play. And obviously, if you want them to be immune, literally immune, their damage should be cut down to like 120 or like 130. Like 150 damage while being immune to 3 schools and 80 resist uni is just too much. That, or they can actually penalize resist. Now I'm gonna be making a video about this in the future because I say this like every time, and people don't understand it. People think that there already is a resist curve in place, but that's not how it works, guys. It's not how it works. If you trade open even hits, the player with more resist will objectively always win that trade. It's not how you think it works when you read it here. You think 73 is 61, but that's not the case. That is when you hit through a shield and there's like 1% left on the shield, it'll be 61. And that 61 is still a lot of resist through the shield. It's not when you take an open even trade, right? You can have 99% resist right now, but as long as your opponent has like the 40 pierce or 40-50 pierce, they're still getting the full value out of that 90-100 resist, right? So I figured I'll just explain that real quick here because I know some people get confused. Resist is objectively not punished when you take even trades, and that is, something KingsIsle can look into and fix. Coming in at the number 2 spot, I think I'm gonna have to put Death. Now I was tied between Death and another school, but off of my experience and off of the deaths I've played, I think Death is just an absolute menace right now. Death is basically what Stormfire and Myth should be in the meta right now, so if you're a very aggressive player like myself, playing Death right now will easily complement your playstyle. You have, literally Storm stats, right, on a Death right now. You can drain when there's literally no counterplay to draining right now. and you have utility like a hit and a weakness on Grim Reader. Not to mention you have cards like Headless, which is just objectively a storm card, so why the hell would you not spam it, right? And shield gambits are overpowered right now in the meta, and you basically have the best gambit in the game with the shield meta in the game, so it's with a drain that isn't punished, so it's just a no-brainer that I think death should be this high. As somebody whose worst school was death, prior to me deleting my death, you know, a long time ago, I was so bad at death before. I can't stress this enough. It was by far my worst school, but I came back and I went 38-2, I believe, if we don't count the people cheating. I went 38-2 on my death, when I haven't played on him in months, and I was bad at him before. And that's just kind of crazy to me, because how can I not play my worst school for months and I can perform that well, right? Like, something's clearly wrong with the school. But again, objectively speaking, I think it's because you can play death like how you're supposed to play storm and fire, where you have the stats to actually play offensive on a death. Unlike storm and fire, you don't. Then you also have the utility of like hit and weaknessing and draining that isn't punished. So death right now is like easily an S tier school in my opinion. I just wouldn't put it at first place though, because objectively speaking, resist is just, you know, better, and if you have more health and, you know, more utility, it's easier to play, and that's why I'm not putting death at number 1. But it is definitely, you know, arguably top 3, top 1, 2, 3, and I think it's number 2. Coming in the number 3 spot, I think I'm gonna have to drop Balance here. Balance is still a top tier school. A lot of people would put this at 1 or 2, but again, looking at the lens of objectively speaking, Balance doesn't really have that corrective stats, unlike Ice, for example. Objectively speaking though, when you look at Motorist Balance, it's actually not that bad. It still kind of falls under the problem of, you know, having to run Motorist and not a 150 piece of gear, but it's, you know, kind of irrelevant for Balance because they get so much resist and so much health and so much utility, right? Yeah, Balance is really good right now in the meta. Max tier Lore Master does like a 1,000 per pop or something, and it's just so easy to combo with Mach. Burn is still really good. You have cards like Golem, Iron Curses, Minion Killers, a Gearhead Destroyer, which arguably is broken. I know a lot of people don't like this in the meta. There's no punishment to spamming Brace, unfortunately, right now. I don't really know why the devs don't do something about that. A Balance can just keep on spamming Bubble and Shields and Brace the entire game until you're literally dead. I've seen it happen, and I've done it. Not to mention, Aura Pop as well does a absolute brick amount of damage, and you can't really do it to get an extra buff to, you know, one-up them, right? They can Aura, and you can't, and that's a very, very big advantage. And yeah, I just think because Balance has everything right now in the meta, its stats is pretty good. You know, Hydra as well. Hydra's pretty broken. You gotta worry about a Hydra as much as you worry about a Rusolka right now in the meta, which is pretty stupid. But they literally have everything, and they have objectively pretty good stats. So that's why I'm gonna put it here at number 3. I'm not putting it higher than Ice because Ice is objectively better. And Death, I've just personally noticed myself gassing more people on a Death than a Balance, in my opinion. Plus, Shield Gambits are obviously the meta right now. Alright, so coming in at the number 4 spot, real quick, I want to say all these next like 2 or 3 we're going to be talking about here are all very controversial. You can swap these 3 around any order you would like, but obviously I'm going to try to be objective in this video. So the next 3 I'm going to talk about is Storm, Life, and Myth. I think all 3 of these schools are in the same boat, and let me tell you why. They're all about the same, aside from maybe Myth in terms of like decent matchups you can have, and there's some differences, right? Like where Myth has a lot of utility, Life does too, but Life can upgrade their gear to 150 and Myth can't. So yeah, let's get right into the number 4 spot right away. So coming in at the number 4 spot, I think I'm gonna have to drop Myth here. Now keep in mind this is with the troll being banned, guys. Myth is still a very solid school, and I'm going to tell you why. So it's no secret that the offensive schools have sucked for all of 5th age, objectively speaking. But the one school that stood out is Myth, and that is obviously because Troll. But Myth also actually can get decent stats, as you can see here, with some 150 gear. So when you get good stats with 150 gear, the next thing that comes up is utility. And what is Myth? Myth is a utility-oriented school, right? We're in a meta where stats, the 150 gear audit, and utility is king and dominant. You can't really argue that right now in the meta. So as a Myth, I have hidden minions, I have hidden shields, I have shifts, I have hidden bubbles, I have tons of shield counters, which is, by the way, the meta. I have Jin, which again is a shield gambit, which does an absolute brick. I have D-Shift for trap stackers. I have Saga, which is an absolute... This has like 1600 with 8 pips. And Athena is always a good move if you spam it at a good time, right? Not to mention like Max 2 Ninja Pigs does a lot. You could do Mandar for fun, but that's not really like in the meta right now. Calendar is a really solid card. I honestly don't even know if this breaks DPP, but it's a really solid card. And obviously you have Earthquake, which is pretty helpful. And Minotaur, and Troll was banned, and you can just go on and on, man. You can go on and on, really. Myth is the prime example of what Storm and Fire should also be. You should have a lot of utility with your damage stats. That being said, right, even though I do have this solid Myth build on my Myth, it is only because my pet, essentially, and even then my health is 400 lower than Motorist, so it's still not perfect in terms of stats. But objectively, you can run this better than any Storm or Fire can, essentially. So I think Myth is definitely a worthy contender of the number 4 spot. Alright, next up, I think I'm going to have to put Life. Now, I'm putting Life here again because objectively speaking, right, Life has like some of the best stats in the game right now. Right, we've seen an unbuffed caddies do 2.1. We've seen unbuffed dogs do the same as Rasolka. We've seen so many crazy examples of this. King's Out took Luminous Weaver, which is already a pretty broken card, and they just made it do more damage when there's more damage in the game, which doesn't really make any sense. So that's a very big plus to Life. Then again, obviously, right, their stats are insane, which is extremely helpful. They have a lot of utility on their cards as well, like the hit and absorb. If you do that, and you know, if I have a sorry, if I have a double buffed caddy and they have a double buffed Rasolka, if I caddy first, I will always win that trade, essentially, proportionally speaking. You have a shift as well. Like every school has a shift now, pretty much, which is absolutely nuts to me. Relay is really good. Sprite Swarm is really good as well. I think that the only thing that holds Life back right now in the meta is the lack of variety, but you can do stuff like I do on my Life. I pack like Woodwalker to spice things up to, you know, do more damage. I pack Force Lord, you know, I pack Spiny, right? There are ways to spice it up, but it's extremely one-dimensional, and for lack of a better term, kind of boring and repetitive. And that's why I think Life isn't that great right now. You know exactly what they're all gonna do. They're gonna Aura, they're gonna Lumi spam, right? They're gonna Bubble spam, and they're just gonna just shad over and over, right? It's pretty one-dimensional. There's not really much you can stray from. Kingsall has tried to make Imp Spellman and like Centaur a thing and stuff like that. I have noticed that, which is pretty cool. But I just don't think people are incentivized to do that when Luminous Weaver is so, you know, overtuned right now. But yeah, objectively speaking, you know, because Luminous, because stats, and how one-dimensional and easy it is to play, and the amount of utility you have, I think it's definitely a worthy contender of the number 5 spot. Alright, number 6, we're going to put the Storm Wizard here. Now, some people might be like, oh, Liam, you think Storm's the worst school ever? No, actually, I don't. I think the school is close to being great, but the problem is, objectively, it just isn't. And that's kind of where the community is right now. Like, a lot of people are in denial. Like, they think Storm's the greatest thing ever. Right? You might think Fire needs a buff, Myth needs a buff in stats, but why do they need a buff in stats? It's because Motorist is the best you have, because they made your gear so dog water, as you can see here, compared to Motorist for 150. You have to be stuck with Motorist. So Storm is suffering from a stat problem. Proportionally speaking, they're not doing the amount of damage they're doing, and basically the best way I can explain it from doing the math is you're taking the appropriate amount of damage, but you're not doing enough damage. Now, if you want to be biased and be like, oh, well, I feel like I get hit hard by a storm. Okay, but the devs don't think, like, what you think is hard isn't what the devs are intending for storm right now. They're supposed to be hitting harder, and they're just simply not. And that makes sense, because storm, you're supposed to be afraid of a storm. And if we're all going to be honest with ourselves here, you're only afraid of a storm if they have a Jin up. Like, that's the only time you're actually ever freaking terrified of a storm, right? You have to respect the owl, you have to respect the Rusalka, but you're only ever terrified with the school identity when they have a Jin set up. So the simple fix to making storm better, there's a lot of things. I think they could buff the HP and obviously make better gear. I think the most important takeaway here for KingsIsle though is just simply by making better gear and giving storm a lot more utility. Same thing with fire, exact same thing. Give both storm and fire a lot more utility and give them a lot more, you know, stats. Again, I'm talking about the death stats, you know, that's literally what storm and fire should have right now, or at the very least make it similar to the myth stats that I showed you as well. So between the stats and utility, I think that's just really what the offensive schools need right now, objectively speaking. Again, I don't care if you're biased towards hating storm. I'm talking about the objective facts and the numbers here. That is what the school needs. It needs to have like more of that fear factor in it. It needs to have gear that can actually make it do the damage it's supposed to do. And it needs more utility on its cards, right? So, again, I don't think it's a bad school. I think it's a pretty solid school. If you're a good player, you can probably get to the second page on it. But it's not a top tier school because the lack of stats and the lack of utility and the lack of pressure and damage on its cards. But yeah, easily if KingsIsle fixed, you know, these things, I'd probably put Storm at number 2 in the meta, but these are two very big drawbacks. Again, we're in the meta where stats, objectively speaking, stats and utility is dominant, and Storm doesn't have either one of those things if you want to be honest with yourself. So yeah, I think it's worthy of the number 6 spot, and let's get right into the number 7 spot. Now, it breaks my heart to put fire at the bottom of every single tier list I make, but it's the reality of the situation, man. Can I be honest? I love fire. I love fire, and I've been having this, like, this feeling to just want to play fire for so long, but I can't. It's so bad, and it just breaks my heart. I want to be on a fire, I want to overtime and have success, I want to feel like I'm doing damage, but you just don't, right? A caterpillar and a dog does more than your s'more right now, and it's so sad to see. That's when I personally stopped quitting fire, is when my s'more did 100 damage less than a grenadier. I stopped playing since that day. But yeah, as somebody who generally loves fire, like as much as I, you know, love playing storm, fire, I have this void that needs to be filled. I want to see overtime fire do better. I don't enjoy trapping over and over, especially when I feel like it's broken and the meta. I don't feel good about doing that. I want overtime fire to be better. I will be trying a strategy where I do get burning rampage here. That's why I'm here for a video. Also, I did make a new pet with a dark pact and stuff like that, so look out for that in a future video. But fire just simply, again, it doesn't have enough utility, right? Like the same problem as storm, and their stats objectively are just so bad, and they're not doing the appropriate amount of damage that KingsIsle thinks they're supposed to do, proportionally speaking. And then on top of that, I think over 50% of the schools in the game right now have a shift. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just kind of stupid that they can easily spam and punish your entire school identity, right? I think there should have been only 2 shifts put in the game, right? If you want to have counters, you should have just gave it to Storm, which counters overtimes, and give it to Life that counters damage overtimes, right? You should have only had 2 of matchups for that, so it's less spammed. So I think the inclusion of how many shifts there are, not having a lot of utility, and having, you know, some of the worst stats of the game like Storm and Myth, right? I think it's a pretty big deal, and I really like to see them do something with overtime fire play. I think their priorities right now would not to be so worried about the utility, because I actually do believe there's some cool stuff to be done on a fire. So I think KingsIsle should worry about making better gear for Storm and Fire for now. But for Fire, you should really look into how to encourage them to go for more overtime play, right? Like whether it's enchanted damage overtime that's protected or something like that, you know? Or to just figure out a way to add like a second dot to a big hit, or, you know, take away frostbite and poison's initial damage, right? You gotta find a way to restore that school identity. So worry about making better gear for Storm and Fire, and worry about trying to restore the school identity is my best advice to KingsIsle right now. But let me know what you guys think about this tier list. I think this is probably one of my better tier lists. I dived pretty in depth about the objective data, so I'm pretty happy about it. I've been getting better with that over time on the channel. I don't know if y'all noticed, but I'm pretty happy about it. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Thank you for watching this far. It means a lot, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for being here, and as always, take care, guys.